So KIProtect, I'm one of the founders. We've been around since 2019, are based in Berlin, fully bootstrapped, so no external investment. And we've also been part of the Tech Founders Accelerator in 2019, have worked with companies like Datev and Miele. And today I want to talk a bit about secure, compliant and privacy-friendly data access for data science and AI. So before starting KIProtect, I was a data scientist myself, and I talked to a lot of people in the community and always asked, what is the biggest problem that you have in your daily work? And yeah, what you would expect is maybe that people answer like, okay, I need to learn more about deep learning or about like TensorFlow or the newest development in these areas. But instead, what people often tell you is that data access is actually the largest problem. So the most drastic answer I got is probably from a data scientist who said like, hey, Andreas, I was hired as a data scientist in this large corporate here, but I actually don't have any data to work with. So I don't know what to do. And that's a big problem. And you can ask why is there a problem? And I mean, some of the reason is probably technical. Getting access to data in your infrastructure is of course a lot of work, but the largest part of the answer is probably that there's more and more regulation that makes it more difficult to actually work with data. And this is not only true for personal data, for which there's a lot of regulation, like of course the General Data Protection Regulation and also many other international laws, but also for other kinds of sensitive data that is critical to your business. For example, you have compliance regulations like ISO 27001 that make it more difficult and more cumbersome to access data in your environment, especially if you're active in many different countries. So getting access to the data that your data scientist needs can take years sometimes and is a very complex and difficult to master process. And so with KIProtect, we help you to master this process by providing a so-called privacy and security engineering platform. And that means that we provide you with open source software that you can integrate into different parts of your infrastructure. That can be, for example, an on-premise infrastructure with like a database, a message queue, or for example, a simple file that you want to access, or it can be cloud services like Amazon, Azure, etc., where you store data and manage services. KIProtect can then interface with these different technologies and provide different ways of securely and compliantly using this data. And we do this by providing so-called role-based, role and use case-based access patterns via privacy and security enhancing transformations. You can imagine it in the following ways. So you have your sensitive data that might reside, for example, in a database, and you have your data scientists that want to use this data. And what KIProtect does is that it basically reads this data from this source and then performs different operations on that. This can be depending on the use case, for example, pseudonymization and anonymization, or any other so-called privacy enhancing transformation like a de-identification that makes it possible then to use this data in a compliant and secure way. And since this is a complex process that also involves different stakeholders in the organization, we have developed a toolset called Codex, so-called privacy and security ops platform, as we call that, that allows these different stakeholders to work together and to collaboratively define all of the processes that you need in order to securely access this data. So, for example, your data scientists can work together with your data engineers and other stakeholders like your privacy officers or your security officers in order to define these different transformations on the data and enable the access for using that in machine learning, artificial intelligence, or data science. So it's also open source, open core software, which you can use. The website is on heycodex.com if you want more information. And the benefits of using that, well, there are many, of course, but the three most important ones are that you can drastically speed up and simplify the data access. So instead of spending years sometimes in compliance processes, you can accelerate that and have weeks or at least months in order to access data sources for your work. And another big advantage is that your data scientists get a uniform interface to all of your data. So we have a GraphQL-based data access layer that makes it easy to use data regardless of the source, or regardless if it comes from a database, message queue, or any other source. Your data scientists won't have to worry about the underlying technology, and they can just use the data and get the data they need for their work without worrying about technological changes, for example, in your own infrastructure. And last but not least, you can also automate all of the compliance processes and the documentation This is especially important, for example, for the GDPR, where you have to create a lot of documentation based on the transformations and the operations that you do with the data. And from our experience, manually created documentation is always out of date because data processes always keep changing. So what Codex does is that it automates all of the generation of these processes and makes sure that they're always in synchronization with the actual data transformations that you're using. So if you want to learn more about that, you can read our technical white paper, which talks a bit about our approach and the different methods that we implement, for example, anonymization, pseudonymization. Since it's a complex topic, though, we usually prefer to start discussing using Codex and KIProtect with our customer via workshops. So if you're interested in that, we're happy to offer a privacy and security workshop for your data scientists as well. And last but not least, you can, of course, also read our customer success stories. For example, we had projects with Datev and Miele, where we use our methods for anonymizing or pseudonymizing data in order to facilitate compliant and secure data access in these companies. So with that, I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you for listening.